Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Generations broadcast. My name is Kevin Swanson, and we are broadcasting from my basement out here in the Eastern Plains of Colorado. Son Daniel in studio working the controls, and a bunch of other guys in the studio. I don't know who they all are, but looks like Jack just showed up. Dave Buhner, by the way, also with me today. And today we want to talk about what's going on in the Western world with the breakdown of Western civilization, the attack upon Christianity. And Dave, what's happening is we are seeing Christianity being the thrust of attacks on the part of evolutionists, atheists, homosexuals, you name it. We're going to talk about all the stories where Christians are really right now the target of many of the apostates who effectively rule the Western world, but won't for very long because Muslims are coming in and they're going to be taking over. Why? Because, as it turns out, Christian apostates tend to like to be self-centered, materialistic, humanistic narcissists that implode their birth rates and destroy themselves over time. And then, Dave, I think that's what's going to happen to the West. But in the meantime, there is a lack of neutrality, I would say, in the public forums, Dave. I mean, a lack of neutrality. I mean, I thought we could all get along with each other, but it turns out that that Christians, people who believe the Bible, are the target of those who happen to not believe the Bible. It turns out that you can't all be neutral. It turns out that there is a battle of ideas going on all the time, and at points Christians are going to be persecuted.
Kevin, not only is there no neutrality, but the Christian message has been largely censored. We know that Apple, for instance, is prohibiting many Christian apps, particularly those that are not favorable to the gay-lesbian position.
Sure.
We know that Google has made it their business to keep those who would advertise a non-pro, gay, homosexual abomination position from advertising or getting the top billing in the Google search engines and the Google links. So we know that the message has been censored. We know that the LA Times censors the Christian message. We know the New York Times censors the Christian message. Just now, though, we're understanding how much.
Yeah, here's an article called Beware of the Gestapo. And I don't know where it came from, one of the online forums, but apparently homosexual activists are pressuring PayPal not to handle donations made to groups that promote traditional values. Chuck Colson apparently lost his Manhattan Declarations iPhone app because I was gay activists that were very, very upset with the whole thing. Also, Howard Schultz, the CEO of Starbucks, withdrew as a keynote speaker from the Willow Creek Leadership Summit because of threats from, you guessed it, more gay rights activists. Also, a Los Angeles Times article reported that many in liberal Hollywood who fought to defeat the Prop 8 initiative banning same-sex marriage are now reeling with recrimination and dismay. Meanwhile, activists continue to comb donor lists and employ the internet to expose those who donated money to support the band. They give a couple of examples. The director of the nonprofit California Musical Theater in Sacramento had to resign after a flurry of complaints. Also, Peter Vidmar, a double gold medal winner in the 1984 Olympics in gymnastics, was forced to resign as chairman of USA Gymnastics. Why? Because in 2008 he donated $2,000 to support Prop 8, et cetera, et cetera. A letter writer to the San Francisco Chronicle apparently supported Prop 8. He's been intimidated. They were able to find his phone number. They were able to get names of his children, his dog, his clients, et cetera, and they're doing everything they can to defame him and to encourage retribution against the author's business and its identified clients. On and on and on and on. Beware of the Gestapo, friends. You're probably going to lose a job if you breathe a word against homosexuals. Dave, this political correctness is all over the place, and Christians are being persecuted right and left. And here's a Christian group, a family that lost the right to use their home to hold a Bible study. Just a Bible study with a few friends. They showed up. They were fined $500 in San Juan Capistrano, California, because the city code did not allow for getting together and praying in a house. Also the American atheists are opposing us, Dave. It's amazing. I mean, you talk about a time in history where Christianity is going to be persecuted big time in places like England, Scotland, Sweden, and America. We are entering those years, friends, and if you thought we could be neutral, you thought that somehow we could all fly under the radar and we could all get along with each other, it just doesn't work. That's not the world you live in, friends. There's always been a battle between good and evil since Cain killed Abel. And if there are pro-homosexuals, pro-atheists, pro-public school socialistic ways of thinking out there, pro-evolutionary ways of thinking out there that has an atheistic bent to it, of course they're going to come after Christians. And the American atheists apparently have published an article by a certain man. I can't really remember what his name was. It may be in this article here. Oh, yes, it's Al Stefanelli. He's the American Atheist Georgia State Director. He's coming out against Christians big time. He says under the underbelly of fundamentalist Christianity and radical Islam does not operate in the legal system. They don't respond to lawsuits, letters, amicus briefs, or other grassroots campaigns, and they must be eradicated. What does that sound like, Dave? Does that sound like maybe if he could get a little access to power, maybe if he could get Adolf Hitler elected, or little Joseph Stalin, who was a committed atheist, to take on the presidency of the United States, maybe he could ship a bunch of Christians off to some prison camp and eliminate 25 million of them if he had a shot at it. Good old Al is not being as neutral, not being as open-minded as we first had assumed he would be.
Well, all we have to do is do a little test here. Let's take the word Christian out and put the word homosexual in a quote such as the one that you just read, and you tell me if it doesn't sound like hate speech. Now, let me just read.
They must be eradicated. Okay, that's what he's saying.
The underbelly of homosexuals is they do not operate in the legal system. They don't respond to lawsuits, letters, amicus briefs, or other grassroots campaigns, and they must be eradicated. I think I could get put in jail
You'd be
for
put in jail
quoting
for
that just this way.
Yeah, you would be.
I think it's a hate crime.
You would be put in jail for that. Yeah, but an atheist does it against Christians. No big deal. No big deal. An atheist up there saying, hey, they must be eradicated. And it sounds to me like he's serious. He used the word must 3 times. Did you catch that, Dave?
I did catch that.
3 times. And the guy's pretty committed to eradicating Christians. Okay, that's an atheist from Georgia.
No, he's
committed to eradicating Christians. And Dave, you read a lot of these strings. You read a lot of these strings. I mean, there's one against us.
Oh, yeah.
That came out recently. But you read these strings, they're violent. They're angry. I mean, they are vindictive. They want to kill, murder, massacre, eliminate Christians. I mean, just there's an anger that wells up in ungodly, unsaved people. Not surprising. It's called depravity, friends, and it comes all the way back from the Garden of Eden. Has to do with the nature of sin that seems to be very alive and well in the present day, and certainly among the Christian apostates of the Western world. And that's what I refer to humanists and atheists as. These were people who at one time, their great-grandmothers and their great-grandfathers and their grandmothers and their fathers were probably Christians. And they are very, very, very angry against Christians. And these tend to be the very, very most violent people against Christianity, against righteousness. It tends to be those who at one time walked in the way of righteousness, at least had some access to it, but rebelled against it. And they tend to rebel in a very severe way against the righteous. And we see that with Cain, and we see that with even in the spirit of Esau. You remember he was going to kill Jacob. I mean, he really wanted to kill Jacob. So we see this sort of attitude among the ungodly, among the atheists, among the homosexuals. It certainly is to be expected, Dave.
It is to be
after
expected.
all, have hearts of depravity and are in the process of apostasy.
Well, it is to be expected, Kevin. We're told that the wages of sin are death. And even as the serpent said in the garden, the day you eat of it, you shall not surely die. But they did die. They did die. And this is a death cult that we have here. Homosexuality is a death cult. Those who are in defiance of the law of God are part of a death cult. Now, they would rather sacrifice Christians or, when they had the chance, sacrifice Christ. But it turns out that it's by suffering that the kingdom grows even faster. So you understand their anger. They can't win by not killing, and they lose faster by killing. But what will anger do? Anger will
It's got to be frustrating.
It's got to be very frustrating. Yeah, when you're up against the Lord of Lords, the God who is, you're always wrong.
But also they have a trust in the state. They tend to have a trust in the state because they have a trust in man.
When they have control of it.
When they have control of it, exactly. The difference between radical atheists, radical Muslims, and fundamentalist Christians like us is that atheists will rely on powerful governments, atheistic governments, to eradicate Christians. That's what Stalin was doing. That was Mao Zedong was doing. Okay, that's what they've been doing for the last 100 years. So this is no big revelation. That's what Nero tried to do. Atheists will rely on powerful governments, atheistic powerful governments, to eradicate Christians. By the way, Muslims do the same thing. Muslims will rely on their powerful governments and Sharia law to eradicate Christians. That's what they do. But we don't need men to eradicate atheists and Muslims from off the earth. We don't need that. We actually believe that God will sort it all out in the end. We believe that actually God is in control of stuff. And besides, our major focus is to preach the Word of God. As we do on this program all the time, we call men and women to repentance, whether it be homosexuality, adultery, fornication, lying, you name it. If you're in sin and you're breaking God's law and you're not making it up to that level, that standard that God has brought to us in His Word, then go to the cross of Christ, receive His forgiveness, and then love Him and keep His commandments. Do that. That's great. That's the way you live life, and that's the way you live life abundantly. So we don't need governments to punish people for thought crimes, Dave.
Not for thought crimes, for real crimes.
You might need governments to punish atheists when they're consistent enough to their ethically relativistic worldview, such that they're raping little boys and murdering the innocents. Okay, if atheists get a little out of control like that, then we will use some governments to kind of rein that in, because biblical law directs us that way. All right, so the governments do have a purpose, but we don't need to run around and eradicate all the atheists and the Muslims because they don't agree with us. And that's what atheists and Muslims like to do. Okay, that's the difference between atheists and Muslims and Christians, especially those of the fundamentalist stripe. Committed Christians. I'm comparing committed Christians now to committed atheists and committed Muslims, who seem to be very big on this eliminating their enemies. And Dave, here's a passage you can use. This is a New Testament passage, and if there's any contradiction, if there's any opportunity for the New Testament to correct something that exists in the Old Testament, then God has the right to do this. God has the right to adjust certain things. And what do we read in the New Testament in the parable of the wheat and the tares? They will grow together. And we are not to separate the wheat and the tares ourselves until the final judgment. Which means there will be no genocides. There will be no separating out. We don't need to have a big religious crusade where we're weeding out the atheists and the Muslims. It's a specific mandate given to us by Jesus Himself in the New Testament. And if there's any contradiction between some of the stuff that was happening in Israel in the Old Testament, then I believe this particular passage will correct that. We're not going to engage in any kind of massive weeding out of people who don't agree with us. The wheat and the tares will grow together in the field, and the field is the world, until the end of time, at which time the angels will do the business and God sorts it out Himself. So, Dave, this is a very important difference between fundamentalist Christians who take the Bible seriously and the jihad you get out of the Muslims and this eradicate the Christians, they must be eradicated stuff we get out of old Al from theAmericanAtheist.com.
And Al and others like him would say, well, Christians want to eradicate homosexuality. And that's true. We do want to kill sin and certain sins that are capital crimes according to the Word of God. That doesn't mean we go around killing everybody who ever had a homosexual thought. It means that there's a guy out there and he's doing something homosexual, especially in public.
He's out there raping little boys. Yeah, we'll take care of it. Yeah, he's out there murdering the innocents as they do with abortion and stuff. We need to take care of it, but not by means of some kind of a private church-oriented crusade. No, it's by means of proper civil governments who go after the bad guys. And hopefully we'll have some governments who are a little better at doing that kind of thing in the years to come.
And we don't need thought police. Actually, the police are to actually go against crimes that are physically committed, and God sorts out the heart.
Sure.
You know, He's the judge of the thoughts.
Well, there is a real battle going on, friends, and I tell you what, the most significant battle is that of ideas that is waged every day on this radio program from my basement out here in the Eastern Plains of Colorado. I mean, this is a war of ideas, and the bad guys are out there, and they're going to take advantage of everything they can possibly take advantage of in order to gain control over governments, in order to persecute the good guys, in order to gain as much control, as much government control over as many people as possible so that they can bring their murderous intents upon the masses. They've done it before. They can do it again. Please. Report that proves Planned Parenthood is targeting blacks and Hispanics. No surprise there at all, because, you know, they've been doing that since Margaret Sanger was a great eugenicist, and she said we've got to go after those races that are prolific and yet not the ideal races.
The human weeds.
Human weeds, yeah. She referred to them as human weeds. And here we have a report from Life Dynamics. We've reported on Life Dynamics before. They did the Maffa video, I believe. And the Maffa video, as you recall, pointed out the racism that came out of Planned Parenthood and continues to be foisted upon our nation today. But this time, Dave, they did a correlative story between the zip codes in which you find Planned Parenthood correctional institutions and the percentage of blacks that happen to be in those neighborhoods. And what they find is that there are way more Planned Parenthood offices anywhere where there happen to be African American populations than anywhere else. The rate of pregnancy among black women is almost 3 times as high as it is for white women, and though they make up less than 13% of the female population, black women have about 37% of the abortions. In Texas alone, 94 zip codes show either an abortion facility or a Planned Parenthood abortion referral clinic located there, and 72% of the zip codes have populations that are disproportionately black and or Hispanic. Also, we found 42 states